Something happened just 14 hours ago that is forcing scientists to quietly question everything they thought they knew about space. This isn't speculation, and it's not some distant theory. This is real-time data recorded, verified, and now being analyzed under emergency protocols. At exactly 4:18 UTC on April 13, 2026, NASA's Deep Space Network detected a telemetry anomaly linked to an interstellar object known as 3I Atlas. And what makes this event so disturbing is not just the anomaly itself, but the calculated probability behind it, a 0.01% chance of occurring naturally. That number alone should make you pause. Now, imagine this. A dark, frozen object traveling at extreme hyperbolic speed through the outer edges of our solar system approaches the orbital region of Pluto. Under normal conditions, such an object would simply pass through, maybe disturbed slightly by gravity, maybe shedding some of its own material. That's what comets do. That's what every model predicts. But this object did something else entirely. Instead of losing mass, it extracted it. Not randomly, not chaotically, but with precision. A concentrated stream of nitrogen gas pulled directly from Pluto's thin exosphere was siphoned and attached to this object as it passed by. Let that sink in. We're not talking about scattered particles or accidental interaction. We're talking about a controlled, localized extraction of atmospheric material. The kind of precision that would require manipulation of gravitational or electromagnetic forces with near-perfect accuracy. In astrophysics, that level of control implies something we are not comfortable saying out loud: intention. When scientists analyzed the numbers, the result was even more unsettling. Exactly 33 million tons of nitrogen gas were displaced and tethered to 3I Atlas in just 3 hours, not dispersed, not lost into space, captured. The probability of a random comet producing a vacuum-like intake effect with such accuracy is about 1 inch 8.4 billion. To put that into perspective, it's rarer than winning the global lottery multiple times in a row under perfect conditions. This directly contradicts everything we believe about cometary physics. Traditional models describe comets as passive bodies, dirty snowballs made of ice and dust that react to solar radiation by releasing material. They do not collect it, they do not harvest atmospheres, and they certainly do not perform what looks like a targeted extraction from another celestial body. And this is where things start to escalate. Even experts at the European Space Agency, scientists who have spent decades mapping the behavior of objects in space, are now reevaluating their trajectory models, quietly, urgently. Because when an institution like that initiates emergency observation protocols, it means something has crossed the line from unusual to unexplainable. From a physics standpoint, what we're seeing breaks fundamental expectations. In a vacuum, gases don't behave this way. They disperse. They don't funnel. Yet here we have clear evidence that nitrogen was not scattered, it was guided, directed into a narrow stream and transferred with surgical precision. That's not random fluid dynamics, that's controlled flow. And right now, telescopes across the planet are scrambling to reposition. Every second matters because the object is moving faster than our ability to fully understand it before it disappears beyond optimal viewing range. The window to study this phenomenon is closing, and whatever answers exist may soon vanish with it. But this is only the beginning. Because if this event can somehow be explained as an unknown natural anomaly, then it rewrites the laws governing atmospheric interactions in space. But if it cannot, if no known model can justify a 1 in 8, 4 to billion precision siphoning event, then we are forced to consider something far more unsettling. And what comes next is where the real mystery begins. And what comes next doesn't just deepen the mystery, it completely changes the direction of the investigation. Because to understand how something like this could even happen, we need to step back and ask a more fundamental question. What exactly is 3I Atlas? The object was first discovered on August 14, 2025, by the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System in Hawaii. At the time, it was classified as the third known interstellar visitor to enter our solar system. Naturally, scientists expected it to behave like previous objects such as Oumuamua or Comet Borisov, but almost immediately, something didn't match. Instead of releasing gases as it approached the inner solar system, this object remained completely inert. No visible outgassing, no vapor trails, no signs of sublimation under solar radiation. For a body roughly 4.2 kilometers wide, that alone was highly unusual. But what truly puzzled scientists was its temperature behavior. Under normal conditions, an icy object traveling closer to the sun should begin to heat up, causing its surface to release gases like water vapor or carbon monoxide. But 3I Atlas did the opposite. It maintained a stable surface temperature of approximately minus 240 degrees Celsius and almost perfect thermal equilibrium. That kind of stability suggests insulation or control, something shielding whatever lies beneath its surface. And that's where the anomaly begins to evolve. As the object continued its outbound trajectory, moving past the orbit of Neptune and heading toward the Kuiper Belt, it encountered Pluto. Now consider this carefully. At a relative velocity of nearly 87 kilometers per second, any interaction between two bodies should be brief and chaotic. At those speeds, an object should slice through Pluto's thin atmosphere like a bullet through fog, causing minor disturbances at most. But that's not what happened. On April 10, 2026, everything changed. The James Webb Space Telescope, specifically its NIRSPEC instrument, detected a sudden and massive spike in nitrogen signatures trailing exactly 412 kilometers behind 3I Atlas. That alone was strange. But what confirmed the anomaly was the fact that three completely independent systems detected the same event. NASA's JWST identified the nitrogen using near-infrared spectroscopy. Meanwhile, the Gaia spacecraft recorded a subtle gravitational disturbance consistent with a sudden mass transfer. At the same time, the Atacama Large Millimeter Array analyzed thermal emissions that matched the presence of compressed gas. Three different technologies, three separate observations, one identical conclusion. This was not noise. This was not error. This was real. And the numbers were precise. Exactly 33.4 million tons of nitrogen gas lifted directly from Pluto's atmosphere. Not scattered, not lost, but extracted with what can only be described as surgical accuracy. Imagine driving past a cloud of smoke at extreme speed, and instead of disrupting it, you somehow pull a perfectly measured portion of it into your vehicle without slowing down. That's the level of precision we're dealing with. But then came anomaly number 2. On April 11th, at precisely 9:14 UTC, new data from ALMA's Band 7 receivers revealed something even more definitive. The nitrogen wasn't just any gas, it carried a unique isotopic signature. The exact ratio of nitrogen, 1,4 to nitrogen, 1,5 that is specific to Pluto's atmospheric boundary layer. In other words, this wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a random interaction with space debris. It was a confirmed extraction from a specific source. At this point, scientists were forced to acknowledge something critical. This was not a collision. It was not a natural grazing event. It was a controlled removal of material from a planetary atmosphere. And once that realization set in, the entire interpretation of 3I Atlas began to shift. Because if something can take material like that, what exactly is it capable of doing next? because what came next didn't just confirm the anomaly, it shattered every remaining assumption scientists were still holding on to. Up until this point, you could still argue barely that this might be some unknown natural interaction. Rare, yes. Unlikely, absolutely, but still within the distant boundaries of physics. That argument collapsed on April 12th at exactly 14:22 UTC. That was the moment anomaly number 3 appeared. Instead of the extracted nitrogen trailing behind like a typical cometary tail, something entirely different was observed. The gas wasn't dispersing into space. It wasn't thinning out. It wasn't behaving like gas at all. It was being compressed, and not randomly but into a structured formation. The Hubble Space Telescope, using its Wide-Field Camera 3, captured something that left even veteran astrophysicists speechless. The nitrogen had condensed into a perfectly shaped torus, a donut-like ring orbiting the equator of 3I Atlas at a distance of just 12.5 kilometers from its surface. Pause and visualize that. A rogue object, moving at extreme speed through deep space, had not only stolen gas from Pluto, but had reshaped it into a stable, high-density atmospheric ring around itself. In over 4 million years of modeled cometary behavior, we have never seen anything remotely close to this. This is where the physics begins to break. Under natural conditions, gas in a vacuum spreads outward. It cannot self-organize into a tight, rotating structure without an external force holding it in place. That force would need to be incredibly precise, balancing pressure, velocity, and containment simultaneously. According to leading atmospheric dynamicists, including experts at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, such a structure would require a localized magnetic containment field. And here's the critical part. Natural comets do not have magnetic containment systems. Not even close. The precision required here is almost impossible to comprehend. To capture and maintain 33.4 million tons of gas while traveling at 87 kilometers per second, the object would need to apply a directional force with an accuracy margin of just 0.005 degrees. Any deviation, any slight misalignment, and the entire gas cloud would have dispersed instantly into space. But it didn't. It was captured, it was stabilized, and more importantly, it was being retained. And that's when the situation escalated even further. Because while scientists were still trying to process the formation of this torus, new telemetry came in. The atmospheric ring wasn't just stable, it was evolving. It was becoming denser. And even more concerning, it was beginning to heat up. Now ask yourself this question. Why would an object that has remained perfectly cold at minus 240 degrees Celsius suddenly need a pressurized, rotating nitrogen atmosphere? That question became urgent when NASA's Deep Space Network antenna DSS 43 inches Australia locked onto a new signal at exactly 11:45 UTC. The data revealed something that should not be possible under any natural model. The nitrogen ring was rotating at a speed of 4.6 kilometers per second, and it was doing so independently of the object's core rotation. Let that sink in. The gas and the solid body were moving separately, mechanically segregated. That alone violates basic thermodynamic principles. In a natural system, gas surrounding an object would synchronize with its motion due to frictional forces and energy transfer. But here, the gas ring was acting like a completely separate system, almost as if it was being actively controlled. At this point, scientists stopped trying to explain it as a comet, because this was no longer behaving like one. And then came the most disturbing detail so far. Spectrometers began analyzing the internal composition of the rotating gas. And what they found inside that ring didn't just challenge existing theories, it threatened to rewrite the foundation of astrophysics entirely. Because the nitrogen wasn't just rotating, it wasn't just contained. something inside it was changing. And whatever that change was, it was happening fast. And just when scientists thought they had reached the limit of how strange this event could become, the data delivered something even more impossible, something that should not exist under any known law of physics. On April 12, 2026, at precisely 22:45 UTC, the Chandra X-ray Observatory detected a sudden thermal emission coming directly from the nitrogen ring surrounding 3I Atlas. This wasn't predicted, it wasn't modeled, and it certainly wasn't expected, because the nitrogen that had been extracted from Pluto should have been extremely cold, hovering around minus 230 degrees Celsius. That's the natural state of nitrogen gas in that region of space. There is no sunlight strong enough, no internal heat source available, and no known mechanism that could suddenly increase its temperature. But the data was clear. The nitrogen torus wasn't just warming, it was rapidly heating. Within minutes, sensors recorded a spike that pushed the temperature to an astonishing 450 degrees Celsius. And here's the part that breaks physics completely. The core of 3I Atlas remained perfectly stable at minus 240 degrees Celsius. Think about that contrast. An object colder than deep space, surrounded by gas hotter than molten metal, and both existing side by side without equalizing. This level of thermal segregation should not be possible. Heat naturally flows from hot to cold until equilibrium is reached. That's one of the most fundamental laws of thermodynamics. And yet, here we have a system where extreme temperatures are being maintained independently, as if something is actively regulating both states. To understand how unlikely this is, scientists calculated the probabilities again. The chance of an object naturally siphoning gas with that level of precision, already 1 in billions, the probability of that same object compressing the gas into a stable, rotating torus, even smaller. But now, add a third condition, extreme thermal segregation occurring simultaneously. When those probabilities are combined, the result is staggering. Roughly 1 in 4.7 billion. That's not rare. That's practically impossible. To put it into perspective, it's like placing an ice cube inside a blazing furnace and watching it not only survive, but begin organizing the flames into a perfect circular halo around itself. That's the scale of contradiction we're dealing with. And this is where the scientific community began to shift from confusion to concern. Even researchers at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, known for their work on extreme cosmic phenomena, acknowledged that the only plausible explanation for this level of control would involve artificial magnetic confinement. Not natural forces, not random physics, but something engineered. When institutions at that level begin openly questioning whether an event is natural or not, it signals something profound. Because science is built on skepticism, but also on evidence. And right now, the evidence is pointing in a direction no one is comfortable confirming. From a distance, if you could zoom out and observe this phenomenon from Earth, what you would see is not a comet, not a random asteroid, but something that looks almost mechanical, a dark, metallic object surrounded by a glowing, controlled ring of energized gas, almost like it's processing something. Fool. And that raises a question that no one has publicly answered yet. Why would an object need to heat and compress nitrogen gas in deep space, far away from any energy source? There is no solar radiation strong enough out there, no volcanic activity, no frictional heating. And yet, 33.4 million tons of nitrogen are being superheated by something invisible, something contained. Then came another detail, small but critical. The Gaia spacecraft detected a microscopic shift in the object's trajectory, just 0.02 degrees, not caused by gravity, not caused by external forces, but by the gas ring itself. It was acting like a stabilizing gyroscope. Let that sink in. The ring wasn't just surrounding the object, it was influencing its movement, stabilizing it, controlling its path. At this point, we are no longer observing passive physics. We are observing a system that is behaving with purpose. And what scientists discovered next inside that heated, rotating ring is where everything truly begins to change. And now we arrive at the moment that changes everything. On April 13th, 2026, at exactly 6:22 UTC, the James Webb Space Telescope detected something no model in modern astrophysics can explain. The nitrogen surrounding 3I Atlas was no longer just gas. It wasn't just heated, it was being transformed. Spectroscopy revealed that the nitrogen molecules were being stripped of their electrons, ionized, converted into a highly energized plasma, not randomly, but systematically layer by layer, until the entire torus became a fully active plasma ring. And then came the number that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. A perfectly symmetrical electromagnetic field measuring 4.8 Tesla. Let that sink in. A small interstellar object, just over 4 kilometers wide, had created a plasma shield comparable to the magnetic intensity of advanced experimental reactors on Earth. This is something that should require stellar-level energy or a massive planetary magnetosphere. And yet, here it was generated from stolen planetary gas, sustained in the vacuum of deep space. This was no longer an anomaly. This was a system using harvested nitrogen as active shielding. A system capable of controlling temperature, structure, motion, and now electromagnetic energy. Every observation from NASA, the European Space Agency, and multiple observatories confirmed the same conclusion. This is real. So now we are left with only 3 possibilities. Either this is an undiscovered natural phenomenon that rewrites the laws of physics as we know them, or it is a rare quantum-level interaction we have never encountered before. Or, and this is the scenario no one wants to say out loud, we are witnessing a form of autonomous interstellar technology. Because a natural comet does not extract atmospheres. It does not compress them. It does not heat them. And it certainly does not turn them into a controlled plasma shield. Right now, as you watch this, 3I Atlas is approaching the edge of the Kuiper Belt, preparing to disappear beyond our observational range. In less than 14 hours, we may lose direct data forever. Whatever this object is, it is moving silently through the dark, and we are running out of time to understand it. So ask yourself this one question. If this is not natural, then what exactly are we looking at? If you found this breakdown fascinating and want to stay updated as new discoveries unfold, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this with someone who needs to see what's happening beyond our world.